Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's 7 o'clock now, according to my phone. And I hope everybody changed their time and you're not in the wrong meeting tonight. So I'll call this meeting tonight to order. And the first item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Vice Mayor Barbara McRae.
Please join me in saying the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
That didn't even right either way.
Alright, let's see. Okay, we don't have anybody signed up for, so the first thing I want to do is the adoption of the November the 4th Town Council agenda. Has everybody had a chance to look it over? Does anybody have any changes they want to make? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Okay. Next is the approval of the consent agenda for November the 4th tonight. Has everybody had a chance to look over the consent agenda? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adopt, to pass it, or whatever.
Motion to approve.
Yeah, okay, second? All right,
And that public hearing will be 6:05, December.
It's December 4th.
for the rezoning petition,
Yeah.
we'll be setting that tonight.
December
Yes, it's
2nd.
already, is it already set? Okay.
December 2nd at 6:05.
All right. And we have a public hearing at 6:05 for the plat stamp amendment. Is anybody here to speak to that? If not, Mr. Setzer, you're up, sir.
I did, yeah. We did.
Mr. Mayor, before you move on,
Yes.
maybe I missed it, but I don't know if you had a vote on to approve the consent agenda.
Yes, sir, we did.
You did?
Yeah,
Okay.
we did. Mhm.
Unanimous.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This amendment to the UDO is to amend, it's Chapter 152.052 E4I, which is the section where we have in our UDO stamps we have a variety of different stamps for subdivisions, splits, merges, when there's a sale of property. So currently, the one stamp that we use the most common is a stamp that says that when there's a sale piece of property, that everything on the property conforms with the town UDO. And 90% of the times, they all do, but every now and then we'll have a plat come through where there's a house or a business or something that's setting in the setback and don't have a stamp in the UDO to say that it's a non-conforming use currently, that it's a building that's in the setback. It's nothing to stop a sale of a property, but this stamp would just be at the time of a sale or the time that a plat is being recorded. The new owner or the seller would be made aware that this is a non-conforming. There's something non-conforming on the property, which can be made a notation or something. And that's what this stamp would be for, is just so making people aware that there's a non-conforming conforming something on the property, where it's a fence or a shed or something. Because it saw that the town would be more liable if you put something down saying something is conforming when it's truly not. And then instead of kind of grandfathering something in that's what it's supposed to be down the road. So that's what this is for. The planning board has met on it. You've got the draft text that Mr. Henning has wrote is in in your packet. Planning board approved it, and you can see a plat here. There's a plat in there as an example of back when there was a sale of a piece of property in town. And you can see how you've got all these buildings, and some of them, there might be a 20-foot, 10-foot setback, and you've got buildings sitting on the property line. And so it was just an example survey, and then there's the planning board recommendations with where the planning board voted and it's got they answered the 5 questions for the text amendment.
Any questions from the board? Any questions? Yes.
I have a question. I think I may have asked this previously in the ordinance review committee meeting, but how does this affect somebody? Like, let's say I was buying the Beasley flooring property. I'm imagining it's got some non-conforming uses. If you stamp it as non-conforming, does that affect the material value of the property for like an appraisal? And would that stop a bank from financing a property that has that stamp on there?
Would not. It would just be, it'd be legal non-conforming is what it would be. It means it's legal, it's fine. But I mean, you would just be, it's gonna be non-conforming no matter what. If didn't have the stamp, but if sometimes I've had banks or lenders or somebody wanting to know if something's a legal use and I'll get a zoning compliance letter. It's in a sense the same thing.
So we can give them a letter that say this is a legal use. It's just non-conforming?
Yeah, you could say the building's non-conforming, but it's the use of the property is conforming, it's legal, and so on.
And if it sells again, is anybody obligated to tear it down or bring it into compliance once we?
No, no one's ever obligated to tear anything down. The only times you would be is if there was ever like a fire or something. Then that's when you would get into an issue, or if somebody's trying to add an addition. This would be making people aware that it's non-conforming at the time of sale.
And your UDO as a whole already says, what do we do with properties that aren't in conformance with this now? They are grandfathered in, so it's already what your regulation does. In this section that specifies the stamps that Justin has to put on a plat, we didn't have one that said this is legal but non-conforming, and so here's your notice of it. So it's just to make sure we're clear where they fall into the UDO.
It puts us in line with stamping it properly.
Correct.
Yeah.
Any other comment or questions? If not, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Thank you, Mr. Setzer. Okay, moving on to, we had public session, but 2 folks signed up, and then they will be speaking at an agenda item. Is anybody else who wanted to speak at the public session? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Cranover. You know the rules. 5 minutes.
Yes.
Okay.
The people that's fixing up the 2 houses across from the Raised Chapel on Green Street, they bought the church, which you and Barbara caused Dot to not give it to the community
No,
for what stent y'all put.
No, Ms.
I know.
Crownover, that's not quite right.
That's true.
No, that's not
I heard
quite
it out of the
right.
horse's mouth.
Okay.
And so the community doesn't get that. And these drug people staying in there now, a couple, it's got a small kid and they're pregnant with another and they don't put my name in the paper. I'm right here, shredded.
Ms. Crownover, I'm very sorry,
And
but this is a public meeting and the media has a right to put the name of anyone that speaks to this board.
And these people that's putting up tents and staying behind the condemned house on Bidwell Street, the brick house on the corner.
Yes, ma'am, we're going to be discussing that in about 5 minutes.
And I should have wrote me a list, but I've got a cracked bone and
I'm sorry.
and on my ankle and my knee, my left ankle and my right knee. I shouldn't even be here, but a person called or I'd been here in time to sign the book. But I think that they ought to be in a election, a special election, that if anybody's been in here for 2 terms, just like the president, if they don't do what the taxpayers pay them to do, then they need to be fired.
Yes, ma'am.
And if I have to get up, go to house and have a meeting down at the community center, I'll do that because the roads need paving There's potholes. The roads are not marked. You can't even see Green Street because the roads is not marked. And these roundabouts is not made right. It's not made like the one up at Walmart. And the people that come from town that way, and I usually come around and come out between where Donald Fisher lives. And people coming from town going down the Georgia Road, they don't even yield, ever. And every one of them says yield. And I have to sit there and wait for 10 or 15 or 20 cars pass before I can go south. And if I get hit, then I'm gonna sue everybody that voted for it because it wasn't necessary. That's all I've got to say. Which I know I'm talking to a brick wall because nobody doesn't do anything what the taxpayers want. But I know people to contact that I can put a stop to some of this shit.
Oh,
And I'll do it too if I have to.
yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Crownover. Okay. Let's see, let's get back to new business. The first action is for the board to take action on the plat stamp amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance. Is there any further discussion on this matter? If not,
I move that we,
you want?
I move that we
Okay.
adopt
All right, so that's second.
amendment.
All in favor? All right, takes care of that. The next item is a discussion, and we have some people here tonight to speak to a house that we have at the corner of Bidwell and West Main Street. And Mr. Setzer, if you will be so kind as to show what we're dealing with. And we have been dealing with it for a number of years. Mr. Setzer, if you'll just kind of move on through with the slides, let everybody get kind of a feeling of what we're dealing with. And if you'll just hold that one just for a second or back it up. We have had some vagrants, people staying there, and actually Ms. Crownover just made mention of the tent. That's the tent that we found there the other day. Now, we did find somebody in that tent the other night, and we do now have no trespassing signs so that our law enforcement officers do have something that they can do about the vagrants that are coming into it. If you'll just keep moving with them, please, sir. And there is evidence that people have been living. This is on the front porch of the house, canned goods and what have you. A lot of broken windows. We also have had reports of rats, a fox, feral cats, and that's the roof of the house. So, Mr. Setzer, thank you, sir. Ms. LaGuire, did you want to speak, please, ma'am? You are a resident are you right next door or one house down?
Two houses.
Two houses.
On the other side of I'm on the other side of the house, but we are also caretakers for the home next door. We tend to the yard and make sure the home is properly cared for the people that own it that do not stay there full time. Hi, I'm Beth LaQuire. I live at 347 West Main, as I said, 2 doors down from the home we're talking about, which is 373 West Main, or as everybody refers to it, that house on the corner of Bidwell. I'd just like to thank you for giving me a minute of your time to listen. And I would like to, for myself and the other residents here, to publicly address my concern for the health, safety, morals, and welfare of the city due to the continued deterioration of the dwelling at 373 West Main. The required number of residents petitioned in 2017 to the town, and the first letter went out to the owner on April 28th of 2017. As of today, November 4th, 2019, The requirements set forth by the town have not been met by the owner. And I will read from the letter sent to the owner. Number 2 from 157.77 of structural conditions reads, walls or partitions or supporting members, sills, joists, rafters, or other structural members shall not have holes or cracks which might admit rodents. There is a beaten path in the grass to the underneath of the house where animals go in and out of the home, amongst other things. The roofs, flashings, exterior walls, basement walls, floors, and all doors and windows exposed to the weather shall be constructed and maintained so as to be weather tight and watertight. This was in the first letter sent to the owner. This home has never been weather tight or watertight during the continued process to remedy the situation. This picture that you're seeing here was open to the weather the spring we had 20 inches of rain. So it's been getting continual water in the house for at least 3 years now. So we're asking, as residents of Bidwell subdivision, we'd like to know when the town will be enforcing their own minimum housing standards and following through with their enforcement procedure set forth in 157.038 of their own ordinance. So this will be remedied expediently, so that we will not have to deal with vagrants being in and out of the home and being concerned for our own safety in our homes. I never locked my doors in the first 9 years or so that I lived here when I lived out of the city limits, and we're looking into a security system for our house. In the 2 years since you started the process, there have been teenage girls removed from the house that were partaking of their hopefully initial and final drug use. It's a miracle they weren't harmed in the house. Vagrants have been seen going in and out of the house, not just on the front and back porch. As was mentioned before, there's a myriad of feral cats and animals that live in the house. You saw the picture of the tent and the girl sleeping in the tent, and people living on the front and back porch. I know if you lived next door, you wouldn't be happy. So we'd just like to know how soon this will be remedied so that we can feel better about our community and all the people that visit don't have to drive by this house.
Yes.
Thank you. Any board member have any comments or want to question Ms. LaGuire? Is anyone else here on Bidwell Street that would like to speak to this matter?
Do you want me to come up here?
Sure, come on down. Yes,
I'd
ma'am.
just like to make a couple of quick comments. I think-
Absolutely. If you would, just for the record, let us know your name.
Okay. My name is Jackie Matry. I live immediately next door to this house. Ms. LaGuire has covered almost everything. I'd like to make one comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to say that it's not a matter of if, but when someone's going to be injured. Doesn't matter if that person's trespassing or not. That would just be mitigation of damages. That person would be entitled, and I think your city attorney would agree, would be entitled to sue not only the owners, but the city, because we've been waiting a long time for something to be done about the house. So it's time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else want to speak to the matter? All right, anybody on the board? Yes.
I would just say, you know, I don't live on Bidwell Street, but I live immediately off of Bidwell on Sunset Drive, and the house has been a concern of mine for a long time. But in the past, it was just that's a real eyesore kind of thing. But lately, with the folks who have been staying there, it's really become a safety issue. I was really concerned about Halloween, with all the huge number of kids and families walking around that home and in front of it and all near it in the dark and everything. I don't know what I thought would happen, but it was a concern of mine anyway. And I don't know how soon we can do what we need to do, but I would like it done as soon as possible. It's a concern of mine as well, is what I'm trying to say.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
what is our status
So, I know the town has been aware of this structure and the situation of it for a long time. And it did go through the administrative procedure for the minimum housing code. And at your direction, you have sued the owner. They are sued in Superior Court. I couldn't give you the exact date off the top of my head, but it's been this calendar year. It's been about 6 months. The difference, and as you all remember from the last minimum housing matters that we saw through to completion and demolition, in fact, it can be a lengthy process, but we try to make it go as fast as we can. The principal difference with this one is that unlike those past situations where there was never any answer filed and you were able to default them and get them to a default judgment in a very comparatively rapid fashion, the homeowner in this circumstance is retained counsel and answered. So we're in the midst of, now we have a joined lawsuit. We have always tried to balance the need for the town to have these things remedied as quickly as possible with the desire that folks get on board and voluntarily, see the need to comply with the ordinance. Some are more willing to do that than others, unfortunately. So that's where it stands at the moment. I have to be a little bit circumspect with what I tell you in this setting because the town's entitled to a privileged conversation with your attorney, which I could give you a little further update. Not a lot. I mean, it is procedurally at the point where we need to figure out if we're pressing forward with more expensive measures of do we take steps in terms of a discovery process and what's it going to take. So that's roughly where it stands. I mean, I understand why folks who live in the vicinity of this. That's why you passed the minimum housing code to begin with, is for situations just like this. So, I don't think there's ever been any lack of sensitivity to that by the town. I apologize that it can't be a faster process, but we're working on it.
What is the and maybe I can't ask this, but what is the reason why they are fighting this?
I'd be happy to share the answer with you. It makes and it's a public record.
That's what I'm after, yes, sir.
Sure. It makes some allegations about a allegedly faulty process, which we have evidence that we can, in fact, I think we effectively have laid into court that shows that it wasn't a flawed process that got us to this point. It makes some allegations that there's some sort of due process violation, both under state and federal constitutions. I don't think there's any merit to any of the answers. That's the elements of the answer.
Is there fines accruing at this point? I mean, do we fine for violations in excess of a certain amount of days?
I don't believe we ever have assessed any fines on this. And minimum housing, we have. It's basically a results-oriented type ordinance that we, again, it tries to encourage owners to comply and bring their properties up to. It does not feature fines as a tool to do that.
It can be assessed.
It can.
But I don't think we ever. Okay. No.
Yes,
Can
ma'am.
assessment of fines encourage?
Can we
them to-
require?
Excuse me just a minute, we got two people speaking. Yes, ma'am.
Two questions. Number one, has a structural engineer ever gone out and assessed the property? Number two, wouldn't an assessment of fines encourage the owner to do something about the state of the property?
Which you are within your legal right to do, it's in your ordinance.
Ms. McRae, you had a,
Yes, I was going to say is, if this is endangering people, can't we require them to at least mitigate, board it up or something to prevent the,
It's been boarded several times.
I know it.
Reboarded and reboarded.
And the roof is collapsing.
Excuse me, when the citizens, when the people on the street complain.
Can't hear you.
When the people on the street complain, he comes out and does the minimum. He puts up a few boards across the window.
Yeah.
This last time, when the tent was discovered, the day that we're knocking on doors pursuant to Mayor Bob's Mayor Scott's Facebook post to get as many people from Bidwell as we could to show up at the meeting. While we're out knocking on doors to ask people to come to the meeting, suddenly he appears, puts up a piece of metal roofing and a sign saying no trespassing for the first time ever. And I've been living there since 2016. And the house has been like this, steadily worse and worse for at least 10 years. So a few boards aren't doing it. One of the chimneys is leaning over. So what happens if a brick falls on somebody? The roof is caved in the back, as you can see. Pieces of the roof are falling off the edges. And we should worry about the homeless people that are coming in and out of there and the teenagers, whether they have the right to be there or not. They can be hurt.
Right.
Thank you,
People
ma'am.
like you and I aren't going to be trespassing.
Did you have a,
Is it legal for us to be able to put his name in print and maybe a little shame go into this? I know always, for the 8 years I was on board, his name is never mentioned. Every time something has come up about him, it's like it's top secret. Maybe a little shaming would do, you know?
it is public record.
And the ownership of any piece of property is public record.
I mean, I don't mind saying who it is.
Answer
Be my guest.
It's Houston, Mr. Max Houston.
Mr. Max Houston, remember that, everybody.
Yes, ma'am, please.
But if I'm on the right track here, it's in the Superior Court, and as long as litigation is ongoing, you've done what the town needed to do, so we've not been negligent in sitting around. And now, when it's in the court, we can't do anything, can we? I mean,
It's not a summary process,
That's-
exactly. I mean, I'd love to be able to tell you, you could just go pull it down tomorrow. It just, it's not, that's not the right way to do it. That's in the best interest of the town overall. And I understand why that's a problem for the people who have to live next to this thing. And I apologize. I wish I could make it a faster process than it has been. We're working on it.
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
When exactly was the complaint filed?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can look it up and let
What
you.
year?
This year, this calendar year.
This year. And the petition was filed when, Deb? 2017?
2017.
Mm-hmm.
2 years.
2
But-
years.
It's when the minimum
It's been vacant for more than a
housing
year, which
process
gives
started.
you the
but
right to go ahead and
but
take it.
even if it could have been filed a little sooner, we're still at the point, no matter what, we're in the court, and the court, we have to wait upon their ruling. I mean,
Correct. Yeah.
Could- Maybe, Ms. Tanning, you could explain what grounds they have to keep this tied up in court. I'm not sure what's going on. I mean, it has been 2 years.
but
Since this whole-
anybody can file a response and just buying time. I mean, every citizen has that right once it gets into the court.
Well, what about on grounds of public safety, health, issues of that nature?
That's what
Well,
your
I mean, I'm
ordinance
talking
is
about the
found.
court.
And your ordinance is an expression of your intent to preserve the health, safety, and welfare
Right.
of the town.
Exactly.
So but it is dictated by state law, the process you have to follow to get it to court and to then have the person forced to do whatever it is it takes on that property to comply with the ordinance.
I think Mr. Henning, like he said, it's 2 years ago when the minimum housing process started, and it's such a slow process. We had to go through the fact finding. We had to give them
Oh, yeah.
the opportunity for legal due process to have an opportunity to do something, and they didn't. But, you know, and then it's a very long process. I can remember, and it's all because the risk we are put at if we go make an action that we didn't take this process for, and then we are legally potentially responsible for a lawsuit in that situation, more so than I think any of the other situations that have been laid out today.
Are there further violations at this point in time than there were when we originally
Yes,
sued?
So that's something that we are exploring, whether at this point, because they've answered, I think it would take an additional filing. I'm not sure we can't ask for it. You need leave of court, and this gets into areas where I need instruction from you all, and you have the ability to ask me in closed session if you want to. Again, I got to be a little bit circumspect about it, but it was cited as deteriorated. It's up to your land use administrator to figure out if it's dilapidated at some point, but that's, I mean, it's certainly possible. That would mean it's not repairable within 50% of the value of the property. And that may well, we may have crossed that line, I don't know.
Excuse me.
Yes,
I
yes,
don't know if
ma'am.
my question was ever answered, whether a structural engineer has looked at the property.
The town has not had a structural engineer look at the
Okay,
building.
thank you.
Yeah.
And now that it's in court, is it typical of like a normal civil suit that it could take up to 2 years for anything to be resolved?
I don't know about 2 years, but I would hesitate to give you, I can't give the town a definitive date on which this definitely will get done.
I
And
just
again,
want to know what the typical case would take.
We've never, the town has not had a minimum housing case that was answered to even try that out. So I don't, you know, I can't even try to get, it'd be pure guesswork.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I guess we're right back where we were before the meeting started at this point. Is that correct?
I don't have any further update to give you than just.
Well, what can this board do? Can this board do anything right now?
I mean,
Sorry, I'm sorry to keep doing this, but since you have not had a structural engineer look at it, would it be possible for the town to hire one and get out there, and that would be something that your attorney could bring to the court?
Can I ask a question in response to that? If you had a structural engineer go out there, it still would not speed up the court process, though, would it? I mean, it's in,
You could file another,
well, if you file another something,
you could have a
you're gonna
hearing.
get back in the same, I would think that if you have a court case, you would be better suited to see the end of that. I just don't know how the board can speed up anything. I'm not saying that that I don't feel bad for them,
Right.
but I'm just asking, is that correct?
Yes, I don't, that would, if we had such a thing, it would be some evidence. I'd just be guessing at the process to actually get administrative warrants to go get a structural engineer to look at some.
Because you don't have
private
the-
citizen's property. Again, we don't have the legal right to just intrude on somebody's private property.
Because
unless
they're
we go-
already in the court
Correct.
system, so they're not gonna want you up on their property, I would think.
Correct, we'd have to do it by
You
a.
could petition the court, and the court would say, yes, I can.
I worked in the court system also, sitting on the side to know that it takes a process. So I'm not a lawyer, but I can see that we can't just
I
do
also-
some things that the public might
I
want.
was a paralegal, and I know you can petition the court at any time and ask for anything. It will be up to the court to decide.
You're
whether you can
correct.
do it.
Ma'am, I'm an attorney. Don't tell us how to prepare a case,
I'm not
please.
telling
Excuse me, they have a right, Mr. Collins, to express opinions.
So do I.
I know you do, and I'll just let you do it.
We're getting in a lot of back and forth that Mr. Henning is
Okay,
answering appropriately.
let me kind of intercede here just for a second. Mr. Henning, cannot a fire marshal or someone get an administrative search warrant to go into that house?
There are administrative warrants that any number of officials who have reason
That's
to go
right.
onto the property could get.
All right. Could we not do that and then see if it would not behoove the town to move to hire a professional engineer or a structural engineer to take a look at that property?
I'd be curious, will that even speed the process up? Is this not going to be probably the fastest path?
The only thing faster, there's two things you can do. It's either go through a superior court action, which you are doing, that is time consuming and expensive and has a lot of hoops that you have to jump through, or you could act in a summary fashion and go knock the thing down. The latter, I'm telling you, is a recipe to get sued to kingdom come for all kinds of constitutional violations you won't have a good answer to. And so,
I can see that.
and having a fire marshal, I mean, if they have available to them some other remedy, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but at the end of the day, the summary process that you're asking for that would just have the thing poof gone gets whatever governmental entity does it in potential legal peril. And that's what I've tried to steer the town around.
All right, so right now, I don't know that we're going to get anywhere. So is there any proposal from the board as to what you would like to do or don't want to do?
I have another
Yes.
question.
Yes, sir.
Not a
Bring it on.
solution, unfortunately. I have another question. If, you mentioned earlier, if the house were, officially stamped as dilapidated, what, more than 50% the value of the home to repair it, right?
Yes.
If we were to have it assessed and officially deemed as a dilapidated home, would that help anything? Could that?
It's the same process to then go ask the Superior Court for an order for this property owner to do that. Or in the case of, we were able when, I don't know whether we get to that same remedy with an answer filed, where we had default orders, default judgments that we got to ask the court for without anybody pushing back on the other side. We asked for and the court gave us the authority to go and be the ones who did the remediation and took the building down. Potentially ask.
Mayor,
Sorry.
Yes, sir.
I think the best that the town could do and what the town should do is maybe we haven't given it as much priority. If there's a motion about a procedural issue, call for a hearing. If it's a matter of being able to get a peremptory setting or otherwise get it into court, go ahead. I know we're in the system, but there are certain tweaks that can be done, and let's try the heck to do them, because we've got a winning case here if we can get it before the judge. And I think that's the best we can do.
Yeah.
All right, well, do you want to put that into a motion?
No, I don't think it needs to be a motion.
Okay, let's just do it.
I think so,
Okay.
yeah.
Does anybody don't want to do it?
No, do it.
All right. Okay, that settles that. We'll,
Brandon,
Yes.
did you? have a
I
question?
just want, I'm not as keen on some of this stuff as the attorneys in the room. What exactly do we need to do? Like, what's
John,
next on our?
Mr. Hitting knows, John knows.
okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've got just a lot of routine business left. If y'all would like to stay for it, you're welcome to it. I will promise you this, we will keep you apprised of what actions we take from this point. I think you see where the council is right now. And I wish I could be more.
I just want to say, I
Yes,
don't
ma'am.
really think it's so much a council. I don't think we can do a lot. I mean, based upon the court and the fact that we can't go against something. I understand about trying to expedite it but if it's in there, we're really putting ourselves at risk, like our liability if we start doing things when it's in the court. But I agree with Mr. Collins if there's any kind of peremptory setting or anything to get it moving along.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Now that the no trespassing signs have been put up,
Okay.
will there be regular patrols?
Will there be what, ma'am? I'm sorry.
Regular police patrols?
Ma'am, that's exactly why the signs are there. We found a young woman there the other night. And the police have felt like unless that property is posted, they really cannot make arrests.
Right.
They can make arrest if the property is posted.
Yes,
I did notice though, there's only one sign, and it's on the back of the house on that green roofing material, so.
And the back of the house also has huge, big holes in the screen. So anybody that wanted to still go in could still go in.
Yeah, okay.
especially if they went at night when
Yes, sir.
the residents are sleeping.
I'm James LaCour, I'm Beth's husband.
Right.
And I just want to make a comment about Ms. Mashburn. She said that she feels for us as what I would feel like is the whole council there and everybody in this room as a city resident should feel the same way as we feel. That's an eyesore of Franklin. And when I tell people where I live, when they ask me where I live, I tell them where I live. The next thing out of their mouth is, oh, what about that house in the corner? Where are they going with that house in the corner? It represents Franklin from not people that live here, but also people that come in. So it affects our livelihood in more ways than you think. It's the house that everyone talks about in Franklin. And I would think that you should all have the same motivation as we have.
I do feel that way, but I'm saying if it's in the court system, I just don't think we can take any action. That's just legally.
I have a comment on that. When the first time we went and talked to Justin, he made some comment about, this was 2 years ago, when we started the process, did the petition, he made some comment about, well, we've been trying to get him to do something about it for years. That was the first thing out of his mouth. So I don't know why it's taken us to be here tonight to get something done, but I appreciate it, and I appreciate everything that you're going to do to help remedy the situation. I just think it's taken way longer than it should, and I don't know why that process didn't go further as council members and employees of the city to make that happen.
Well, thank you.
Just concerned about that timetable.
Yes, ma'am.
I think what Attorney Collins said is absolutely correct, is the city attorney, or your attorney, the city's attorney, goes ahead and does what they can in court. Petition the court for whatever that your attorney thinks is possible and take it from there and see what the court has to say. Maybe they say, yes, go ahead, go in. We're going to order that the house be inspected by a structural engineer or at least a professional engineer of some sort that can say whether it can be declared dilapidated or whatever. I mean, I haven't read the complaint or the answer, but as you say, it's public record. We can all go down and get a copy if we want. So,
Okay.
but
All
I
right.
think he has a good idea.
Okay, and if it's okay with everybody, that's probably a good point to just leave it till we decide what we're going to do about getting maybe, my idea is an administrative search warrant to take a structural engineer in there if possible, or whatever else that our legal folks say we can do. And I will tell you, I hope that it works out.
Thank you. We hope so too.
And thank y'all so much for being here tonight. Okay, the next item of business is the exciting presentation of the Franklin audit for fiscal year 2018 and 2019. I think we have a representative from Martin Starnes. I'll get it right here in a minute. So, Ms. Sutsy, you ready to roll on the slideshow? There you go. Oh, thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Gooderham. I'm the audit manager for the town's audit this year. We'll just get started. First of all, we issued an unmodified opinion, which is the cleanest opinion that we can issue, and it basically just means that we didn't find any material misstatements that would lead an outside reader, that would mislead an outside reader of the financial statements. Your report has been submitted and accepted by the LGC as of last week. And as always, very cooperative, very helpful staff. We work with the staff throughout the year. We pretty much start our planning process as soon as one audit ends. We start our planning process for the next one. So I pretty much have the town's phone number memorized, and Kyra's extension as well. Okay, so this first slide goes into detail about the general fund balance. It ended at 6/30/19 at 3.8 million, which was an overall increase of 795,000 or 26%, which was mainly due to a sale of land and an increase in current year ad valorem tax revenue due to the current year tax rate increase. The next slide talks about available fund balance within the general fund. Again, total fund balance at the end of 6/30 was 3.8 million. You subtract stabilization by state statute to arrive at the 3.3 million, which was an overall increase in available fund balance over the prior year of 748,000. This slide just talks about the available fund balance as a percentage of general fund expenditures. This is a calculation that the LGC uses to compare units statewide. Per LGC, 8% represents approximately 1 month worth of expenditures within the general fund. So at 78%, the town had roughly 10 months worth of expenditures on hand, which in comparison to last year was a little under 8 months worth of expenditures. So about a 15% increase. This goes into detail of the top 3 general fund revenues. Ad valorem tax revenues was 44% of overall general fund revenues. Unrestricted intergovernmental was 31%, and other taxes and licenses was 18%. Ad valorem tax revenues, as I mentioned before, increased roughly $255,000 or 13%, which was due to the tax rate increase since the prior year. Unrestricted intergovernmental revenues, which includes things like sales tax, utility tax, and occupancy tax, increased roughly 180% or 180,000 or 14%. Which was mostly due to local occupancy tax revenue. Then there's other taxes and licenses, which increased about 11,000, or a little over 1%, which is comparable to last year. This slide talks about the general fund top 3 expenditures. Public safety at 52%, general government at 23%, and transportation at 11%. General government expenditures actually decreased around 121,000 or 11%, which was mostly due to the Whitmire property assessment that occurred in the prior year. And the Niquosi initiative that occurred in the prior year, as well as a decrease in overall salaries and benefits. Public safety expenditures increased around 102,000, mostly due to higher operating expenses and capital outlay expenses related to the purchase of a truck. And transportation expenses actually only decreased, about 1,000, which is less than 1% and comparable to last year. And then last is just a summary of water and sewer operating income and related expenditures. Operating revenues was around 4.1 million. Operating expenditures was 3.2 million. Your debt service was around 1 million. Operating income was 917,000, and your unrestricted net position, which is basically like available fund balance, was 4.8 million. And that is all. Any questions?
Any questions from the board? So if this was a physical we were having, we'd probably live to 103.
I say that one more time.
If you were conducting a physical of the town, we'd probably live to 103.
Yeah, probably.
So I'm very proud of the staff and how they worked with you guys. And looks like we're in a very sound position. And
It's been a pleasure working with you guys, definitely.
thank you. Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Ms. Goodham. Appreciate it very much. Okay. Adoption of Town of Franklin Retention Policy. Madam Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, what you have before you tonight is just to look at updating and adopting the retention policy. I believe I sent this in a separate email. We'll have it available online as well. Here's a hard copy if anyone wants to view it. It's basically just adopting the state retention policy. We need to update ours about every 5 years. So we're just asking tonight for council to move forward with the adoption of the proposed retention policy, which is the state's.
Okay, any questions on this? If not,
I'll make a
yes, sir.
motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Passes. Okay, amendment to the Town of Franklin travel policy. Madam Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, what you have before you tonight, if you'll look in your agenda packet, is just an amendment to the current Town of Franklin travel policy. It would be to number 10, employees should use their own credit card when lodging facilities that require one for incidentals. In the event that an employee must use the town's credit card, they will still be responsible for any charges occurring on the card. This will be deducted from the employee's paycheck. That's the one we're asking just to make an amendment to the current policy.
Okay. Any further comment, questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor. Discussion on prorated sick leave for the Town of Franklin. Mr. Talent, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. So you have in front of you for discussion our current sick leave policy that allows 8 hours per month for all employees. It's come up from fire department employees and police department employees because they work different schedules. They work 12-hour shifts and 24-hour shifts. So it's been a topic of discussion to potentially change their sick leave accrual to reflect their schedule, their work schedule. So for police, most police officers, it would be 12 hours, and for fire department, it would be 24 hours based on their current shifts. So I just want to bring that to you all for discussion tonight.
Yes, sir.
Fundamentally, it just doesn't seem fair. Maybe it's the way some things are done, I don't know. But over the course of a month, I assume that the hours that's worked evens out, whether it's 8 a shift or 12 a shift or 24, and that's a whole nother issue. But to triple up, which would be 24 to 8, because they've chosen to go to a different shift coverage on a monthly basis, it doesn't seem to be equal treatment to all of our employees in general. I could be persuaded otherwise. It just, whenever I saw this, it just strikes me as just not being equitable, but I'm open for discussion.
I see what you're saying.
One employee would get 3 days of sick leave a month that way, and the other employee would only get.
Well, they get hours. They would call it they always just call it one day because it's an 8-hour day or a 12-hour day or a 24-hour day. But when you work a 24-hour day, you don't work again, whatever. But in the overall, don't you think in a month's time, in a year's time, they get the same amount of time in? It's just chosen.
And Mr. Mayor and Council, if I may, I can certainly see the position and what you're coming from, and I can see that. I think one of the reasons I know from a human resource standpoint, from a manager standpoint, we've had several different employees, whether it's been through recruitment or current employees, have approached us on this issue. And I certainly can see the logic behind both arguments. The one that we get presented a lot is, well, I worked. I'm a police department, and I work a 12-hour shift, and I get 8 hours a month, so I've got to, hopefully I've banked enough sick over amount of time to be able to allot that additional 4 hours coverage. And we're just wanting to start for some discussion because, we felt like that this was a great common ground because it seems to be a question we've been hit at quite a bit from different, primarily our public safety standpoint, and just kind of wanted to get some direction and feedback from the board. Maybe, this is great discussion, what Mr. Collins is having, and just some direction of what we could relay to employees if you want us to pursue it further. I know there's several municipalities and counties that do a prorated sick leave. Everyone's different, so we just kind of wanted to open that up, not looking for necessarily a vote tonight, just for some discussion so we can say that we're looking at that or if it's something we need to look at.
It's also, but there's also one of the things too, I think it would help us with our recruitment of police and fire, and that's getting pretty hard to do right now. There are openings all over the state, but nobody's applying. The applications for fire and police are way down across the state. In fact, across the nation. And if you've been keeping up with the the news, you will see that this is a common problem. And so if this could help us in recruiting, you may take that into consideration.
Well, how do other employees feel about it?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if I work at the water plant, I work an 8-hour shift, and I'm sick one day, I'm gonna get paid for 8 hours.
If you've been there long enough to earn that in a month, yes, sir.
Okay, which is a month, because you get 1 day per month. If I'm a firefighter and I get sick my day that I'm supposed to be on for 24, I get paid for 24 hours.
That's
If we went to this policy.
If you went to this policy, yes, sir.
But as it stands now, the firefighter would have to use 3 days to cover one shift. The water treatment man would have to use 1 day to cover one shift.
That's the issue we're running into.
But the firefighter wouldn't work the next 2 days in either situation, because he works 1 day for 3 days.
True, the only, Mr. Mayor and Council, if I may, I could definitely see that argument if you were trying to look at a vacation allowance, because when you pick your vacation, you should look at your work schedule and determine, okay, I'm off this day, or I gotta work this day. We're sick, unfortunately, a lot of times I don't want to be sick that day. But just, these are great discussions to have. So that's what we're opening up for is feedback.
Well, if I'm a firefighter, I'm much more likely to be sick if I'm going to get paid for my 24-hour shift.
Well, that would be detrimental to your employer, so it wouldn't.
You got to listen to John Conley sing about that.
I can see it two ways. I can see if I'm sick and I need that, I really want it.
Yeah.
But what if I'm never sick?
Yeah,
Then when I get ready to retire, I've banked a whole lot more of the time with,
we followed up on that.
Okay, because that's my part in it.
So, according to the state, of course, your unused sick time does go towards retirement. 20 days equals 1 month. According to the state, that allowance is based on our policy. So my 8 hours would be the same as their 24 hours. So it would take 20 24-hour shifts to equal 1 month, just like my 8-hour days.
So when the end of the year comes, you're both carrying over the same amount of time? Is that how it would work?
No, I mean, it would still roll, theirs would still roll at 240. So it would still roll over into I'm sorry, I misspoke completely. But at the end, yes, in accordance to the retirement, it would be the same.
So the 8-hour and the 24-hour would never, it would work out in the end at the same?
With the retirement, yes.
Okay.
But only at retirement it would.
Yes.
Right, because I mean, because just about banking up that would be the thing.
It's a double-edged sword.
But let's work this through just hypothetically here. Again, back to water plant and firefighter. A water plant guy could be sick, still only 1 day a month, and get paid, which is 8 hours of pay. A firefighter could be sick for basically 3 of those days and get paid every month. Even though it's only 1 shift per person, a water plant guy that's sick for 1 day is going to get paid for 8 hours, and a firefighter that's sick for 1 day is going to get paid for 24 hours.
It would be based on what their shift policy, what their shift would be. So if it was a 24-hour shift, yes. If it's an 8-hour shift, yes. That's it's a double-edged sword.
It's shorting the 8-hour person.
It is.
It is that, and I'm not really sure that I want to look at that, but it was just here for discussion.
Just discussion, just wanted to bring this up.
Can I just bring up one more thing? And just to kind of go back to, I understand, that may feel like you're shorting, but your regular employees work 2,080 hours a year. Your firefighters, for example, is 2,756 a year. So that proportion's not exactly correct. Just food for thought and for your thoughts in accordance to this discussion.
And I'll just say, just kind of as a side point, I've seen a structure where it's, you're not gaining the sick time per day or per week, you're earning it per hour you work. And on the same shifts, like if you're working a cross weird weekend shift, I've seen people accumulate a higher percentage per hour. Like firefighters could accumulate a different amount of time based on the amount of time they put in. But I've definitely seen it where it's you work 36 hours and then times the formula, and that's how much sick pay you accumulated that week. Might be 3 hours or 2 hours, and you have to build it up.
But we don't.
But it could be a
Just do
more
straight 8, 12, or just 8 across the board. It's 8 hours.
Because I can see pay in certain positions certain different rates, especially to incentivize a position that's more needed or harder to recruit. But at the same time, that way people aren't just accumulating standard amounts of days like that. Whoever works the most is going to accumulate the most time because they're going to need it the most.
Is there a middle ground solution, like what Adam's talking about right here, or is it?
I mean, it's more
one or the
complicated
other?
because you got to determine by position and by shift who gets what, and then some of those positions too. It's over 8, you get more. Over 12-hour shifts, you get more. I mean, there's a lot more to it. More complicated.
But other municipalities are doing this,
What's proposed.
what you're proposed.
Travis, Mr. Talent, I'm sorry, what were those two numbers you said again? For the 24-hour employees and the 8-hour employees yearly?
8-hour employees that work 40-hour weeks, 2080. And then fire is 2756.
I think that's a pretty important piece
it
of
is.
information on
That's
this decision, and I didn't want that to be glossed over.
Overtime?
No, that's the 7K exemption for your public safety employees.
That's 30% more hours then.
A lot of people don't realize that fire and police are not standard 8-hour days.
Correct.
It just goes with the territory.
But that's not always a disadvantage though either. I mean,
Well, it depends, yeah.
It's weighable.
Yeah. And I think the EMS has the same problem because what do they work, 24 on, 3 days off?
24/7.
24 and then they're off 2 days,
Yeah,
something.
we're 24/40, yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody know how they do that here, the EMS?
I
Just,
think they're prorated.
Yeah.
They're not?
They
EMS
accrue
is not- They
by pay
accrue.
period.
yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Because of the fact it was in the county and,
Unless that's changed, I think that's the way that we always did it. Okay, anything else on this? So where we are, we're going to just take this under advisement right now?
Yeah, that's all we're asking,
And,
just to bring to your attention.
Yes.
I realize tonight it's just for discussion, but I would like to hear if any town employees, 8, 12, or 24, whatever, have anything to say about it to you guys. I'd like to hear what their feelings are when it comes up again.
We get that. I don't get it, but town employees get it per month.
Correct.
So they can stack up. So I mean, it's probably fairly rare then that somebody doesn't have the sick day coverage when they're actually out sick.
Yes,
If they're getting
and-
12 sick days per year.
Yes, sir, unless you're a new employee, which goes back into what Mayor Scott said with recruitment.
Okay, any further business on this? Discussion. All right. Discussion on Town of Franklin Employee Health Insurance start date. Mr. Talent, you're up again, sir.
Thanks. So again, this is just talking about the health insurance and possibly changing the effective date. As it's written now, our policy says that it's effective the first of the month following 30 days of employment. One thing that we run into a lot of times, especially with federal regulation, is the requirement to have insurance. So you may have employees that they can see a lapse in their insurance. You may have employees that just can't afford to go without insurance under this system. The potential change that we would look to make basically just reads that the coverage would be effective the first of the month following the first day of employment, or on the first of the month following 30 days of employment. That sort of just gives leeway to the employee and to the town. It bases it on when the funds are budgeted, and also if that employee would need to double up on their deductions. So, and Kyra, if you have anything to add to that too, on the budget side of things, that's fine.
If it's budgeted on the finance side, there's not an issue with it. But we do deduct a month ahead. So we deduct like this month for next month's premiums. So that's where we run into what we have to deduct from an employee's standpoint plus our portion. So
Where does Cobra fit in?
Cobra is absolutely an option if somebody doesn't have insurance. And of course, you don't have to sign up with Cobra on the front end. If something happens, you can file back to it. It can be fairly expensive is the downside.
Any further discussion? If not, Council, I think you could provide us with a motion.
Hold on 1 second before we motion that. This is budget neutral then?
No,
No.
it would have to be budgeted.
This would give the leeway to work within the budget to satisfy both parties.
Let's say employee A is left October 31st. We don't hire employee B till today. Under this new plan, their health insurance would start December 1st.
You could if the money was budgeted according to the new wording, yes.
And that's the clause in here, if
Yes.
budgeted.
Is it gonna cost us more money, or is it just something we have to budget for?
You have to budget for it.
Well, Mr. Mayor and Council, if I may,
Yes, ma'am.
theoretically, yes, you would. You'd need to budget for it, and that's why the legal language is in there. But it wouldn't be as though you're creating a new position, if I may, where if you were creating a new position, we can't do that unless it's in the budget process or unless that comes before council. So in theory, you may have that rare case that Mr. Culpepper described, but in theory, if you had a vacancy in a position, that employee in theory would be rolling off your insurance plan when your new employee maybe was hired towards the end of the month by the first of the month. In theory, now there are always those little quirks to theories. It should work, and that's why we ran this through ordinance review. I know Mr. Hennings reviewed it with us. This just allows the town a little bit more discretion. If we're budgeted, if funds are available in the budget, it allows us to move forward with this process.
So go ahead, Joe.
By discretion, it sounds like you would either authorize it as an incentive or not. We would be treating employees, it doesn't sound discretionary to me if we go forward with it. It sounds to me like it's the new policy.
And that's certainly part of the discussion we wanted to have here tonight, with some feedback from council on your thoughts on that.
If I'm understanding correctly, it would be rare for us to pay the insurance on the employee leaving and the employee that's here in the same month, but it could happen.
It could.
Right now, it doesn't
could
happen.
Yes, it could happen.
So tell me how much money you're talking about generally.
Kyron, will defer to you on that one, because I know you do a lot of the transfers between the two.
For a single employee, for just the employee only, our portion is $630. So per employee is what we pay for the employee in health insurance.
So that would be 1 month's, essentially 1
month's
month of payment. That doesn't seem like that's.
And how many people do we lose and hire in a year as a town? How many people do we lose and hire in any given year?
I don't think we could give you other than a rough estimate.
4?
Hopefully not that many.
Probably
but
not that many. We don't have a lot of
Retirements or
turnover.
something then.
Yes,
Typically,
Mr. Collins?
What brought this up?
Again, just recruitment. Recruitment is, for council and mayor, recruitment is very difficult for
Absolutely.
local government right now, which I know it is across the board, but we've had several employees who have, possible recruitments who've wanted to make the switch to the town, and this has been a huge deterrent because they wouldn't have insurance for a couple months.
Yep.
A couple of months.
Well,
60
based on
days.
our current policy, excuse me.
So the current is 60.
So
Oh,
our
no.
current policy, I could start on March 2nd, and I wouldn't be eligible for insurance until May 1st in our current policy.
Yeah, and that's
basically
really
2
hurt us.
months.
It's 30 days, the first of the month after you've been employed 30 days. Is what the current policy
Well,
says.
it doesn't seem like that much,
Right.
that much money to give them a
I guess
a
I wasn't
recruitment
thinking
tool.
of what the previous was. So based upon that, it certainly sounds, if I started, I would want insurance.
Well, I think more, if you have if you're recruiting a transfer employee in a position that already has it, that gap is a big pain to that person. I'm just thinking theoretically there too, but,
And Cobra is outrageous
yeah.
to try to do that. Yeah.
Okay, all right. We're going to debate it any further? You want to vote and
I'll say
adopt
one
this?
more thing while we're
Okay,
here.
all right.
I'm just not comfortable with things coming on for discussion and leading to an immediate vote at the meeting. That's just something from the old school, I guess. Certainly the board can do it. It may be the right thing to do on occasions, but whenever we have something on for discussion, I generally like to have the discussion myself and then give us a chance to digest it and bring it up later. That's me.
So let me see if I understand this correctly. If we hire a new employee right now, the way it is, he's got 60 days, or she, before she can get insurance at the state rate. I mean, at our rate. 60 days, as it is now.
January 1st.
Depends on the date they start.
Depends on the
Okay.
date. Mhm.
Okay. So in that 60 days, the employee determines or finds out he's got a serious illness. We wreck the whole family. And I've never known it to be more than 30 days before your insurance kicks in. Anywhere I've ever worked, and God knows there's been enough of those. So what do we want to do?
I've never had health insurance, so I'm in uncharted waters.
Yeah, you are. You are.
I do have health insurance, and it's the most wonderful blessing I've ever had.
That's exactly right.
I hate to be contrary to some of the other opinions, but I would be willing to vote in favor of this.
Okay. You want to make a motion?
What exactly would the motion be?
I don't know that you've made any changes to what was presented, so I mean, if it were to be adoption, it would be move we adopt the employee health insurance start date policy revision as presented.
Then I will make the motion. Sure.
All right. Is that a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3. Well, it's unanimous.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
I feel good about that. Thank you.
Well, I think we all do. Gives us a little breathing room. Discussion on data breach policy. Mr. Inning, you want to tell us what data breach is to begin with?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, and this, I think, really should just be for discussion since it's
Okay.
not that urgent, and also am realizing there are a couple of notes in here that I need to get cleaned up. And I apologize for that, having wound up this version in the agenda packet. Part 1 of this policy you have already adopted, and what it is a federal requirement for you as a keeper of personal identity information to have a certain program in place that you have for your customers and so forth, where you monitor and make sure that identity theft is being minimized. These type of regulations are increasing as that's become an increasing problem. And so what we'll actually be looking at adopting, there is one minor change to part 1 we need to make to recognize this part 2, and that's a data breach notification policy. And what the point of it is you have a very short mention in your existing policy, the red flags policy, about what you're going to do if you did, for instance, find that somebody had hacked into your servers and had your customers' information. So that's spelled out a whole lot better in what this new part 2 of this combined data security policy that I'm bringing to you would be. It's required under state law now that you are to have a written method of notifications about what you're going to do if you do find a breach in your data security. You also, I'm a little surprised that this hadn't been brought to our attention earlier by Y Insurance or your insurer through them, because I think maybe 2 years ago, you added a rider to your local liability coverage for paying for this if it does happen. So the best news I've gotten this whole thing is this will give us the playbook to follow for your staff to follow if there is a data breach. And there is some insurance coverage. You'd have a deductible, of course, but it can be, I understand, a pretty expensive thing to get notices out to everybody who you've got this information on. So that's what it does, is spell out exactly how you're going to get those notifications out and what you're going to do. I'm happy to answer any questions you've got about it. And again, I'll bring you back a cleaned up version next month.
Okay. Any questions?
And we have to do it. for state law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Federal
This is
law.
one of those that really could have fallen under the authorization you've given to your town manager to adopt policies that are required by law. I want to keep having a discussion with you about the things that you're comfortable with seeing just get adopted into policy and you get informed about it later. Things like that where we've said, you know, if state law or federal law requires it, we're just going to do it. But you do need to have it in place.
Okay, so we really don't have a choice much, do we?
No, sir.
Okay, so that being the case, you want to provide a motion?
I think, again, I don't know that it's urgent enough to have to adopt it tonight, and I see a few things that I need to clean up. So I'll just, if it's okay with the council, I'll just bring it back for approval next month. And I won't give you the lengthy diatribe about what it is at that meeting, if that's, unless you just want to hear it again.
I don't know how many of you are aware of some towns that there has been even beyond data breach. They've shut down the water systems, everything, and then have held the towns hostage to clear it back up. Technology is wonderful.
Our IT guy's pretty good though.
All right, let's go to the around the table, see if anybody's got a thing they want to bring up before I get into the announcements and close up. Mr. Kimsey?
No, I do not.
Make my
So
hand.
everybody votes tomorrow.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, nobody.
Yeah, we're doing it.
Well, raise your hand. I can't
Trying to skip it.
judge your mind.
Come on now, Bob. Two things. It's happened to me twice. Bidwell Street is fantastic at Halloween. We
Yes.
owe a huge debt of gratitude to those folks. I've had to use the
Should've said that
restroom
earlier.
twice during that event. What are the chances of the town putting a couple porta potties at the CareNet or somewhere on that street? Could the town afford to do that? Is that even in our scope of work of what we should be doing?
You talking about for special events?
Well, that is a special event. I mean, I know it's not a town-hosted event, but everybody from the town and the county and 3 other counties goes to Bidwell Street. I don't think having a couple porta potties somewhere on that street.
I
would be
thought you
a
meant
bad
day in
idea.
and day out. Yes, I was wrong.
For the people living it.
19,
I mean, is that a legitimate function for us to do, to provide that, even though that's an uncoordinated private event?
what is that rental now? About $100 in?
Like 125, that
Yeah.
certainly would then, I think that would be a great partnership.
I think all you'd have to do is just make a motion, isn't it? Or would it?
I think
We got a little time to think about it.
Yeah, we got
Or the town manager?
One of the ones that,
I mean, they're doing an awful lot there. I'd hate to have
Well, they are.
them to open their
They are.
restrooms up for some, there's a lot of strangers there. They're already welcoming strangers in their yard. You don't want people coming in your house to,
Absolutely.
and if they're not going in the house, they're going in the woods. But anyhow, the second thing I wanted to discuss was, I'd still like to, maybe, we had an election, we may see new faces, we may not, but I'd like to see liaisons to some of our boards so that we could have some cross-communication.
We have discussed that ad nauseum.
What was the decision?
We don't have liaisons. We have the situation where any board member can go to any other governmental thing and sit in and express opinion.
But any member of the public can do that too. I mean,
Well, sure.
I think there could be a lot better communication. I mean, this didn't come up just me wanting to go to more meetings, Bob. I mean, I've talked
know
with
that.
lots of the planning board members who said, maybe, you know, if you, council, knew what the planning board was doing and the planning board knew what the council was doing, a lot of things could go a lot smoother.
Let me address this briefly, because in part, I have had something to do with this. What you had historically was committees, and
Right.
they are the problems under the open meetings law, because every time you have an appointed committee of this body, it's also a public body. It's supposed to give notice of its meetings and keep minutes and all that good stuff. You don't have to do that if you have a single member who's appointed to, and you could do that and have a single member liaison who goes to whatever body it is and comes back and reports, here's what we did and how we did it. And otherwise, it could be to another open meetings body like your planning and board of adjustment. That one, though, is a little bit problematic, because if they're passing on things that are quasi judicial when they get back here, you can't go sit in the planning board meeting and hear them talk about something that's coming to you.
The liaison will have to excuse themselves for that
Correct.
application.
And I want to work on how that's all structured for you anyhow. We've got an occasion to do that because they've changed a whole lot of zoning law on us. But we'll be working over that the next year or so. But you could have liaisons. It's possible for you to do.
Have we changed from what we discussed, Mr. Henny?
No, sir.
Because we discussed that and discussed it, that we had committees.
Yes, sir.
And that we could not, and I could not appoint 2 people to a committee.
Correct. Well, you can, but again,
But it changes the whole.
But one person, we could
It's not
have
a
one
committee.
person liaisons to boards and get some cross-pollination.
There's gonna be a different board next time, we know that for sure, Adam, I'm gonna miss you, because, and this has been a good board, and for a meeting the night before election, I've been to a few of them, it could have gone a whole lot worse than this. If David wants to talk about the, going forward, we'll be having, we or the board, if I'm a member or not, the board will be having ample time to do that as it's newly constituted, but I'm proud of this board.
Yes, and thank you, Adam.
Thank y'all.
Okay, anything else? Not, let's talk about the announcements. The town hall offices will be closed Monday, November the 11th, and the plans for the Veterans Day are well underway. We've got a speaker, color guard, the whole 9 yards of parades lined up, everything. The annual Veterans Day parade, it will be at the gazebo. It'll form up here at 10 o'clock in the parking lot, step off at 10:30, and go to the gazebo. Town hall offices will be closed Thursday, November the 28th, and Friday, November the 29th for Thanksgiving. And Winter Wonderland and the tree lighting ceremony will be Saturday, November the 30th, from 5 to 8 o'clock. So, okay. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Don, a second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, we're adjourned.
Yeah.